So today's topic, the final OOPS concept of an Java, which we call it as an polymorphism. Okay. So what is mean by polymorphism, or what is the need of the polymorphism? So generally, right, they will be calling poly as an many. Okay, which means like we are going to create a one thing, and with the help of the one thing it should assist many things. Okay, so which should assist many things. So whenever you are creating one thing, so if it is assisting many things, then we call it as an polymorphism, because technically the word poly means many and morphism means form. So it is going to available in many form. Like we are going to create one thing, and with the help of the one thing, we are going to assess the many thing. And how we are going to achieve this in the sense, only with the help of the polymorphism concept. So in a polymorphism, we are having two type of polymorphism. So one we call it as an method overloading, and other is often like method overriding. Okay, so these are the two types of polymorphism which is available. And how we are going to create one thing, and how we are going to assess the multiple thing. So generally, right, so whenever we are creating the method, let's say I'm creating the method called as an m1, and then I'm creating the method called as an m2. Okay, and then I'm creating the method called as an m3. So whenever we are creating the methods, so what happened? So technically, okay, it will creates different memory. Okay, so every time it is going to create a different memory. So that is why we need to reduce the method creation. Because if I create the method m1, for m1 the separate memory will be allocated, for m2 the separate memory will be allocated, for m3 the separate memory will be allocated. And how we are going to avoid this memory allocation in the sense, rather than creating the different methods, what we are going to do, we are going to create a different methods but with the same name. So instead of having the method m1 m2 m3, let's say I'm going to provide the method name as the same. But if you provide the same method name, so technically what happened? So as per Java, it is going to throw the error, because the method name should be unique. Now let us try to create the same. Okay, let me just open my old framework under the test Java and under the basics of Java, and let me create an example for the method overloading. Okay, example, I'm just creating the class for the method overloading example. So once we create the class as a first step, so we will be creating the main method. So just I'm creating the main method. Now under the main method, I'm planning to add a multiple method. So let me just create a multiple method like public void, okay, m1. Now what we are going to do, if you use the different method names, it is going to allocate the different memories, right? So how I am going to avoid in the sense, I'm going to provide the method name as the same. So let me create a multiple m1 method. So if we create a multiple m1 method, our assumption is rather than creating the three different memory, so now it will be creating only one memory. But if you use this rule, it will throw the error. So the reason is because m1 is already defined. Okay, so whenever we are using the method name, so the method name should be unique. Then how we are going to achieve this polymorphism concept? Because in a polymorphism, we need to create one thing, but with the one thing we should assist multiple things. So rather than having the multiple methods, we are going to create methods with the same name, and we are going to use each and every method for some individual purpose. And how we are going to achieve? So now in order to create the polymorphism, so the first rule is okay, so the method name should same. So whenever you are creating the method, the method name should same. But when we provide the same name, what is happening? It is throwing the error, right? And how we are going to avoid the error in the sense, okay, whenever we are creating the method with the same name, so we should, okay, differentiate with the parameter. Okay, so we should differentiate with the parameter. Okay, so likewise, either by the number of parameter or by different data types. Okay, for example, like inside this m1 method I can pass one parameter, and inside this m1 method I can pass one parameter. Now if you notice, the parameter count is same. Then how we can differentiate? In the sense, with the help of a data type. Here I can set the parameter as a string, here I can set the parameter as an integer, or else like you can differentiate with like either of a two parameter or the three parameter. So if we differentiate by the parameter, okay, so then it will avoid the issue. So the rule for creating the polymorphism, in which like first thing we are going to discuss about the overloading. Okay, the rule is like, so the method name should be same and we should differentiate, okay, either by the parameter, so which is nothing but either by the number of parameter or by the data types. So if we follow this rule, then we can achieve the polymorphism concept. And first thing we are going to discuss the method overloading. So generally the method overloading will take place in the same class, whereas the method overriding will happens in the different class. Okay, so when you are creating the method name similar inside the same class, their overloading is going to happen. So if you have same method name across different classes, then overriding is going to happen. Now let me just open my IntelliJ. So this is the program which we have created. Like we have added the main method and here we have given the same method name. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to differentiate by the number of parameter, or if the parameter count is same, I'm going to differentiate by the data type. Here let me just have one parameter, let it be like kind of an int a. Okay, and now in this m1 method I'm differentiating like with the data type. So both the m1 method will accept only one parameter, but the data type is different. Now you could see it is not throwing the error. Now I'm creating another m1 method where I'm differentiating with the number of parameter. So here I'm just going to like pass two integer input. In similar way, like I can keep on, okay, adding the method m1 by differentiating the number of parameters or by the data type. Okay, so now whenever the user inject only the numerical value, this m1 method will execute. And when the user injects like string value, this m1 will be execute. And when the user inject two numerical inputs, then this method will be execute. If the user injects string and the integer value, then this method will be execute. So the method is same. So we are using the same m1 method, but we are using in many forms. So for example, okay, as everything is of a kind of a non-static method, so what we need to do? So obviously, like if we need to execute, so we need to create an object inside the main method, because as per Java rule, so the main method will be executing first. So now in order to access the below non-static method, I'm going to create the object for the class. I'm just creating the object like method overloading, like kind of an m is equal to new of method overloading. I have created the object. Now, so whenever we create an object, so the methods and variables present inside the class are initialized. And if I say variable name dot, it will give me the m1 method. Now if I select the m1 method, which m1 method will execute? Okay, so if I pass the value called as an 2, if I just use the numerical input called as an 2, you could see it is giving the one usage, which means, okay, this method will execute by overloading the other method. So as I told, the overloading is going to take place only inside the same class. Now let me just add a like sysout statement, and let me just print this variable, because whatever the value we are injecting, it will be stored in the variable. And if we try to print the variable, so the corresponding value should be print, right? So if for the differentiation, I'm just adding the sysout statement under each and every method, so that like we can at least see the outputs. So I'm just adding the sysout statement, sysout of a. Here we are injecting two inputs, so just I'm adding the two print statement. And in similar way, here I'm just adding the sysout of a comma like sysout of b. Okay, so now I'm planning to run the program. If I run the program, what happened? Obviously, right, it is going to like execute the method called as an this m1, which is nothing but technically it will overload the other method and it will execute this particular method. If I right click and if I run the program, okay, the output will be like kind of 2, and you could see like we could able to see the symbol called as an one usage, which means like we will get to know, so before executing the code, which method will execute. So that is the reason like we call this method overloading as a compile time polymorphism. Okay, so because like why we are calling it as a compile time polymorphism, because before executing the code we will get to know which method will execute. So that is the reason like we always call it as a compile time polymorphism, or in some cases they will be calling it as an okay static polymorphism. Okay, so whenever we say the compile time polymorphism or static polymorphism or the method overloading, so it is going to take place only inside the same class, which means the same method name will be available inside the same class. Now if you see the output, okay, it is printing the output as 2, and all the methods are present inside the same class. So technically here overloading will happen. Okay, this particular method will execute by overloading the other method. Now instead of this 2, okay, if I just inject like some string value, so let's say I'm just injecting the string called as an LMTI. Now what happened? So this corresponding method will be execute, which means it is nothing but it is overloading the other method. If I right click and if I run the program, okay, it will execute the particular method. And we have used this method overloading concept in many places without knowing so it's an overloading or not. So even like we have used the assertions, right? Even in the assertions, so technically the overloading take place. Okay, I will explain like how the overloading take place. So the rule of the overloading is like, so the method name should be same and it should be differentiated by the either the number of parameter or by the data type which is used in it. Now if I say like string comma 78, I'm just injecting the string and the numerical value, then obviously like the below method will execute by overloading the other method. And if I just type m dot m1, okay, if I select m dot, it is giving me multiple m1 method. But if you notice, everything is differentiated by the data type or by the number of parameter. So based upon the input the user is injecting, the particular method will execute by overloading the other method. So by this way, like we are allocating the single memory and we are using the method m1 in the multiple forms. Okay, as we are using in the multiple forms, so we call this as a polymorphism concept. As we are using inside the same class, okay, we call it as an like kind of an method overloading. Okay, so if I inject only the string, okay, then this corresponding method will be executed, and we have used this in many places. So for example, like let us take the assertion. Okay, so we may have used the assertion in various places, right? If I scroll to the down, let's check where we have used the assertion. Okay, for example, here we have used the assertion. So whenever like we type, okay, assert dot, okay, and if I type the assert equals, if you notice like it is having n number of assert equals method. So if you notice like every time, so why it is displaying multiple assert equals method, and where this assert equals methods are present, it is present inside the same class called as an assert class, which means technically like here the overloading is going to take place, because with the help of this assert equals method, so we can compare the two strings, we can compare the numerical values, we can compare the decimal values, etc. So which means like we can compare a number of things. So if we inject the two string value, then appropriately the method which accept two string value will be executing by overloading the other method. If you pass the numerical value, the corresponding assert equals method will execute by overloading the other method, which means even here, like what happened, so the overloading is take place. And even like we have learned the collection concept, right? Okay, so there is an method, that example we have seen in the list. So how we are adding the value in the list? So only with the help of the add method, right? If I just type, okay, l dot, okay, add, you could see it is giving me two add method. So as of now, right, we are we have injected only one parameter, which is nothing but whatever the value we need to inject, we are injecting, which means technically this add method will be executing by overloading the other add method. But there is another add method. We can add the value int specific. If I say, if I need to add the value at the int called as on 1, and if I say int like 1 comma the element which we need to add, then this particular value will be added in the first index here. Now what happened? So this particular add method will be executing by overloading the other add method which is present, as it is present inside the same class or the interface. Okay, so if they are present inside the same classes, then we can say like the overloading is take place. If they are present inside the different classes, then the overriding will take place. And in many places they have used this overloading. And even like while creating the page object, we can like create the overloading. For example, okay, so like we have created the n number of page objects, right? Okay, so like for example, in this home page, in the baby wishlist page, we have clicking on the title. Assume that like you are having some different scenario, like you need to like inject the input. So in the amazon.in, okay, you need to like enter the input, which is nothing but the product. So then what you will be doing, you will be creating the method for the same. Let's say, like I can say like public, okay, void, so enter product name. Okay, so now I will be writing the code. So how I will be writing the code? I will be writing the code in the way of driver dot, okay, find element. So whatever the locator property is there, so we are going to like use the respective locator property. Let me just right click and inspect. So it may have the locator property like ID or name, etc. So let's pick any one of it, and we are going to inject over it. So I can say like by dot, okay, ID, and then I'm pasting the ID attribute, and here I will be using the send case. So technically what happened, like in some cases, we may inject the data from the feature file. Okay, so if we are injecting the data from the feature file, so then we will be passing the data over here. So then we need to inject the input. If some method need to accept the input, we need to parameterize the method. Obviously, like the input type is going to be like kind of a string. So what I can do, I can say string of product name. I'm just giving the variable name as a product name, and we can pass the same over the send keys. Now whenever the user call this method called as an enter product name, either they can pass their own input with the help of the double quotes, or they can pass the input directly from the feature file. But in some cases, like I'm planning to like pass the input from the property file, or I'm planning to pass the input from the Excel sheet. So during the time, what you will be doing? So we are providing the same action, right? So we are going to perform the same action, which is nothing but we are going to enter the product name. Okay, then why we need to create a different methods? So we can like create the, okay, same method name. Okay, now it is throwing the error because the parameter are same as well as the data type is same. Now I'm going to differentiate with the number of parameter. So now if you are planning to read from the Excel sheet, obviously like you will be reading three inputs. So the first one will be like kind of an like sheet name, and the second is like we will be getting the row index, and like we need to pass the okay column index. And whenever like we call this method, right? So 1 minute, just I will give the correct data type. So int, okay, column index. Okay, now inside of the send keys, here we need to call the Excel code. So already like we will be having the Excel code in the utilities. So we are having the Excel code in our old framework, right? So let me just copy the same Excel code. Okay, here we will be having the Excel code. So read data from the Excel. I'm just copying the class file and then I'm pasting in the utilities file. Okay, and let me paste it. And here we need to call this method, and this is kind of a non-static kind of a static method, right? If you access a static method, we don't need to create an object. Now inside our page object, what is the class name? It is going to be like kind of an like read data from Excel dot, we will be passing this method, and in this method, okay, we will be injecting the okay sheet name and the row index and the column index which we are going to get from the user. Okay, so now technically what going to happen, okay, here like the polymorphism, the overloading will take place. So when there is an error, just add the exception. Okay, so just we have added the exception. Now the method names are same. I'm planning to enter the product name. So in my scenario, like let me just take any one of the scenario. So even like let me take this existing scenario, and like before clicking this baby wish list, I'm planning to like enter the product name. How I will be entering the product name? So I can say like context dot, we will be calling the page object manager, and then we will be calling the home page of the Amazon, okay, which is nothing but the sorry the baby wish list page. Sorry, it's in home page, right? Yeah. So then we can say get home page, and if I say dot, okay, it will give me the methods called as an enter product name. Okay, so if I like pass only the product name, okay, what happened? So this particular method will be executing. Okay, so whether I'm using this correct class, no, where I have created, I think I have created in the another class called as an baby wishlist page. Okay, I have created in the wrong class. Okay, so then let me just cut this and let me paste it in the home page, because we are entering the product name in the home page. So already we are having one method. Okay, let me just replace this methods. Okay, so enter product name, let me just remove any one of the method. Okay, so now let's try to call the method wherever required. So now what we have done, let me try to call the method once again. So if I say get home page dot, now this time you could able to see two method called as an enter product name. So technically this method is going to do the same action. Okay, so when something is going to perform a same action, why to create different memories? So we can have the same method name, okay, and we have differentiate by the number of parameters or by the data type. So when I select any one of the method, and if I just pass the input called as an iPhone, so now technically what happen, if I click the enter button, okay, it will execute this method. Okay, it will execute this method because it is overloading this method, and it will execute this particular method. But now, right, like in the same scenario, in the same method, rather than injecting the product name, I am passing three inputs. I am providing the sheet name. Okay, let the sheet name be the login, and randomly I'm providing the row indexes and the column indexes. If this is the case, then what happen? It will ask for the exception. Just add the exception. Now if you notice, okay, it will execute the method called as an this particular enter product name by overloading the other method. And why the overloading take place here in the sense? Because everything is present inside the same class. Okay, so when the class contains like same method names, then obviously like the overloading will take place. So by this way, like we are eliminating the memory allocation. So we are using the method in multiple forms. So when a single method is used in the multiple forms, we call it as an polymorphism. As we are creating the multiple forms only inside the same class, so whenever we say same class, like we tell them as a method overloading. And one more thing is like we call it as a compile time polymorphism. The reason is like before running the code, so we will get to know which method will execute. Okay, because like we are able to judge, right? So which method will execute. So that is why like we call them as an like compile time polymorphism or the static polymorphism. Whereas right, there's overriding, so it will be like take place in the different classes. Okay, and we can't decide which method will execute so during the compile time. So while executing the code, we will get to know which method will executing. So that's the reason like we call them as an okay runtime polymorphism. Okay, so when it is of an runtime polymorphism, like we will get to know so only like during the execution. So while executing the particular code, like we will be get to know which method will execute. But here the different classes are involved. Okay, and as I told, the same rule applies here. So the method name should be same, and then we will be differentiating by the like number of parameter or by the like data type. So this is the universal rule at the runtime. Okay, so the Java will decide which method should be called. And how we are going to specify this in the sense with the help of okay object creation. Okay, so for example, let me just go back to the old framework. Okay, and let me create some basics Java program. Let me just create one class called as an okay overriding okay example. Okay, so in this overriding example, I'm having a main method called as an psvm. Okay, in which I'm having one method. Let it be kind of an public void okay m1. In similar way, okay, I'm having one more class. So let me just create a one more class. Let it be like sample class. Okay, so it's already the sample class is available, so it is not allowing me to do. Or let me use the same sample class, in which like let me just create a method called as an okay public void m1. Okay, here I'm just adding the sysout statement called as an sample class. Okay, and then let me create an output over in this overriding called as an here let it be like kind of an override class. Okay, so now I'm having like two like m1 method. Now what I'm doing, I'm going to do the inheritance. So I have done the inheritance extends of okay sample class. Now if we done a inheritance, what happened? So obviously, okay, this override example will have the knowledge of current class as well as its subclass. So which is nothing but it's a parent class. And even in the parent class, we are having the method called as an m1. And in the current class, we are having the method called as an m1. So now we are having the same method name but it is present in the different class, and technically what happened, it is going to do the overriding. So if you notice some symbol it's added, it says like it has an overriding. Okay, so already we have done this overriding without knowing whether it is an overriding or not. So even like while explaining this example, like I have extended the keyword, right? So here we have used the m1 method. So as the same m1 method is present inside the same class again, okay, here again the overriding is take place. So generally this method, this class is overridden, and overridden by the two class. One is of an overriding example and another is of an this example. And this method m1 is overriding in the two places inside this two classes. Okay, so now which m1 method will execute? Because here the overriding is going to take place. We know the reason why the overriding is going to take place, because the reason is like the two different classes are involved. So whenever the two different classes are involved, we can say like the overriding is take place, but which method will execute? So it is purely based upon the object creation. So because Java will decide which method should be called at the runtime only with the help of the object creation. For example, in the class, if I create the object for the overriding example class, let's say overriding example O is equal to, okay, so new of overriding, and if I just give o dot m1, and if I try to run this program, so now it always give the importance to the class where the object is created, then which will execute this m1 method by overriding the other m1 method which is present inside the parent class. Because so whenever we are planning to use the overriding, so the Java is deciding which method which should be called at the runtime only with the help of the object creation. Now if you see, like it has printed the output called as an override class. But if I create the object for the other class, so let's say I'm creating the object for the other class. So sample class s is equal to, okay, new of sample class. So now which method will execute? If I say s dot m1, so technically it is going to execute the m1 method which is present inside the parent class. Okay, so here the overriding is going to take place. So generally it will get to know which method will execute only during the time of an object creation. So whenever like we are planning to use the overriding, okay, so we always like we will create an object, and even without knowing we have used this overriding in many places. For example, how we have started the automation, if you know, the first step is like we are initializing the browser, right? So while initializing the browser, so what are the things we have done? So we have used the thing called as an like kind of an web driver, right? Okay, so what we are doing, so generally this web driver is an interface, you know, this web driver is an interface. And inside this interface, as I told, we will be having the empty methods. Okay, so which is nothing but with the help of the interface we have set the standard, right? Whatever the method which is available in the Chrome driver or Edge driver or Safari driver, the same method will be available inside the interface as well, right? Because the method names are same. But how we are using the method which is present in the Chrome driver class in the sense, because we have created the object. Because even though the methods are same, okay, here we are overriding the get method which is present inside the interface, and we are using the method called as an get which is present inside the Chrome driver. So generally, like we are doing the automation by overriding the methods of the interface. Okay, and how the particular method is executed in the sense, as I told one point, like whenever we are planning to use a method overriding, okay, it will decide which method should execute only based upon the object creation, only with the help of the object creation, as we have creating the object for the Chrome driver, Edge driver and the Safari driver. Okay, so this particular method will execute by overloading the methods which is present inside the interface. So that is the reason like we are not using those empty methods, we are simply like overriding them with the help of the other classes. Okay, because we have created the object. So whenever the object is created, okay, it will give the priority to the uh, current class. So that's the reason like it will pick the methods present inside the current class by overloading the method present inside the interface. Okay, even here the over like riding is take place. So we won't use the overriding in any of the page objects. So whenever we say the page objects, like purely we will be using only the overloading concepts. Okay, and if something is like over rided, so you could be able to see so where it has been overridden. You could be able to see the notation called as an like so which means like it's some overridden somewhere. So if you just relate, if you navigate to them, so you can able to see the same method will be available somewhere. So that's the reason like it may be overridden. So it will be overridden based upon the like object creation. Okay, so this is how like we will be using the overloading and the overriding concept. So when it comes to an interview, like if they ask the question like what is meant by the overloading and the overriding, you can say like the overloading will take place in the same classes, whereas the overriding will take place in the different classes. So the rule will be same, like we need to have the same method name, and we should be differentiating by the either by the number of parameter, or if the number of parameter is same, like we will be differentiating by the data types. Okay, and we will be practically we will be using this overloading in the page objects, or even like this overloading and take place in many places. So whenever the same method name displays, whenever you give class name dot method name, if they give same method name, technically their overloading is going to take place. But whereas where the overriding is take place in the sense, so generally like we are doing the automation simply by overriding the methods which is present inside the interface. And how we are executing the overriding in the sense like only with the help of the object creation. Okay, so the overriding so generally take place in the different classes, and we will get to know which method will execute one and only if we run the code. So that is why like we call them as a runtime polymorphism. Whereas in the overloading, okay, we will get to know which method will execute before running the code. That is the reason we call them as an like compile time polymorphism. Okay, so now like what happened, like whatever the changes which I have done, so all the changes will be captured in the GitHub desktop. So yesterday as I told, so whenever like we are doing the code change, so as of now like I have pointed to main branch. But as I told, when you are working in the real time, you should create your own sub branch, and you should work you should do the coding in your sub branch, and you will be following the review and approval process. But for time being like I'm just ignoring it. Okay, so now these are the things I have added. So in the baby wish list I have removed this, right? So some spaces are added, so even it is considering the spaces which you have added. And this in the home page we have added this method, right? So it is displaying, and we have added the new class. So read from its example, and here I have added the new step, so it is displaying. And this is a zip file, so we don't need to this zip file. So if you don't need this zip file, we need to unzip it, or else like you can just right click and you can say discard changes. Whenever you say discard changes, so the particular file will be get deleted. Okay, so now I have discarded the changes, and these are the changes we need to add in our branch. So as of now like I'm just adding the code straight away in the main branch. So like in a real time, like you won't be have the access to the main branch. As I am owning this repository, I am having the access to like do the direct commit in the main branch. But in the real time you can't able to do the direct commit in the main branch. Okay, you need to create your own branch, and you need to write your automation coding, and once you are done with it, So then you should do the follow the review and approval process. You will be creating the pull request and it will be reviewed by the automation team and then it will be merged to the main branch. Okay, now let me just add the code. Let it be like kind of an poly code. So whenever you are going to commit something, always add the commits like description so that like someone will get to know what is the need of this commit. So now I'm just doing the push origin. So whenever we say push, it indicates like you are adding the new code to the repository. Okay, so now the new code is the repository. If you have already pointed to the main branch, then if you just click on the refresh origin, fetch origin, then what happened? So whatever the latest code which will be available in the main branch will be added to over here. Now in the main branch, like I had a new code, right? If you are working in your child branch, in your own branch, so now this branch is not sync with the development branch, right? So development branch is nothing but we call it as a main branch as a development branch. Then what we need to do as an automation test engineer, you need to sync up your branch with the main branch on a regular basis. How you will be syncing up? As I told yesterday, like you could able to see the option called as an choose a branch to merge into LMTI. If I just click on it, okay, it says there is an one commit. If I click on create merge commit, now whatever the changes which is available will be added into your branch and simply you need to do the push origin. Now your branch is sync up with the main branch. Okay, so now we have an up to date code. How we can verify whether we have up to date code? So we can try like checking once again. So just click on the branch drop down and click on the choose branch to merge, and this time it says this branch is up to date main. Okay, our branch is up to date main. So whatever the new files which is available in the main branch, which is available in your branch as well. Okay, as an automation test engineer, it is your role to sync up your branch. So till you completed the particular automation work, so many changes will be keep on adding in the main branch, which means like whatever the new changes which is adding in the main branch, you should pull those changes to your own branch so that like we can avoid the conflict issues. Okay, so this is how like we will be following the process. We will be following the commit process in the project. Okay, so till this point, does anyone have any doubts?